Okay, right. Let us work through this business of traditional um, based costing and sort of that sort of area. So the point here is that we're dealing with overheads, right? This is the issue here, that we have these overheads that we don't quite know how to put into the products. That's the key point. And um, what we need to do in costing a product, we need to factor in the overhead element, right? The overhead element, and that's what we're trying to do. That's what we're trying to do here. So traditionally, before we got all excited about activity-based costing, so just what ABC simply was, it simply was saying, listen, volume of a certain utility will drive these overhead costs. So if you're making two products, A and B, whoever has a higher utility sort of presence should take more of that overhead. So, for example, if there are more men and women in a room working, then those, because they're spending hours working, then and if they spend more hours in one department than the other, the light bill should be proportioned in relation to those hours being spent, which therefore led us to then say, well, listen, let's use hours or machine hours as a driver, as a causer of that overhead, if you like. And so we could argue here that look at Alpha, they need 5 hours to make each unit, and they're making a total of 1,200 units. So Alpha will need brings to the table a total of 5 times 1,200, which is 6,000 hours, right? And Beta brings to the table 5 times 10,800, which looks like 54,000 hours. Now, what this means, what they're telling us, is that this organization uses a total of 60,000 hours, and those 60,000 hours have caused this overhead of 420,000 pounds. So, however you wish to do it, I'm sure you will agree that maybe one of the easier things to do, if I'm wanting to cost these things per unit, is to say, well, what is the cost caused by 1 hour of labor? Well, I would simply divide that 420,000 by 60, which gives me £7 per hour. So now if I'm making anything, if I'm making a product of Alpha and I know that it takes 5 hours, then there's direct materials, direct labor, XX. I know for the overhead, you can call it direct overhead, well, it's £7 an hour of overhead. So if you're using 5 hours, I know I'm going to apportion £35 to every unit. You can really do what you want. I mean, the same would apply to Beta for 1 unit, of course. So so I know it's £7. I worked that out now. So let's see what they want. That's what we've done. So they said using traditional methods of overhead absorption, what is the overhead cost per unit? And that was £7 per hour times 5 hours, because you needed 5 hours to make 1 unit, right? And that ended up being 35 pounds, right? And that's all they really wanted. Strangely enough, they didn't even want us to. What is the overhead cost? Explain what a cost pool when using. Yeah, so this is really important. I think maybe this is more the written bits that you need to be very happy with. I think so conceptually, before I take you to some more refined answers, this thing about activity-based costing is really saying, listen, because they do give us those costs here. So you can see here that what activity-based costing is saying is that, listen, we can break down this 420. Overheads are no longer light and heat, right? And overheads are no longer driven by volume, but by the particular activity that's causing it, right? A classic example I like to use is this example of, I mean, I'll do it on this one. A classic example is to do with, I like to talk about like medical drugs like vaccines. You can have Panadol or Tylenol or paracetamol or whatever you want to call it for headaches. You can make 999 sort of tablets, right? And they may only need one quality inspection because it's such a common drug now. But you might be making a really important vaccine, and you may be making just one unit. And imagine you needed 100 quality inspections overall, but you needed 99 because this is a really 99 quality inspections here and one quality inspection here, right? Now, sounds a bit, this is extreme, but I'm doing it this way so you can understand. 100 quality inspections, imagine it was £1,000 for each quality inspection. So therefore, that would be, if you like, a total of £100,000, right? Now, here's the thing. If you were using based on volume, if you were saying, let's do it based on the volume of pills they're emitting, you would give 999,999 of this cost to Panadol and £1 to vaccine. But no, this 100,000 is driven by quality inspections. So it's no longer the idea that let's just go with units, let's just go with volume. No. Let's know what's causing it so that we then apportion fairly. So I will give £1,000 here, and I will give the rest, if you like, 99,000 here or whatever. The point here is that because this one single vaccine, irrelevant of its volume, so hopefully if you're thinking about that, irrelevant of volume, ABC, activity-based costing, says let's look at what's causing or what's driving the cost, if you like, and that's the difference, right? Right, so that was that. So let's answer these. Yeah, so this says what is ABC. ABC is an alternative approach to product costing. It is a form of absorption costing, but rather than absorbing overheads on volume, we allocate these costs to cost pools, or sort of cost pools, and then absorb them using cost drivers, right? And the cost pool really is sort of saying that, listen, this is an associated cost. So this is a cost pool, for example, purchasing is a cost pool. This is a pool of funds. This is a pool of costs. This is a pool of costs. And we now know what's causing them. We now then say setup costs. These are the drivers. Setup costs, purchase orders are driving these costs. Right, we now know. So a cost driver is a unit of activity that consumes this resource. So it's a cost driver is a factor influencing the level of cost. You can just think of a cost driver as what's an activity. A cost driver is an activity, a setup, an order. So this causes, so the more setups, the more the quality inspections. These are cost drivers, right? And the thing with quality inspections is maybe you have one cost here of 100. You have another cost that's related to quality inspections here of 200. You have another one that's related to 300. If you bring them all together into one pool because they're closely related to quality inspections, that's why we call them a pool, because we're bringing in costs that are close enough and connected, right? So advantages. ABC has a number of advantages. ABC is, well, yes, it is more accurate, remember. And I said to you, the biggest point is that it is not related to production or volume, right? And when we're dealing with very complex business environments, it does make sense to have ABC. It's very, very unique, but it's costly to set this up, right? So there must be a cost benefit analysis. Now, here's the thing. If overheads are small, right, very small, then you could just apportion them using the cheaper method of traditional absorption costing. If they're a small proportion, you can just do that. Right? And it's sometimes very difficult to allocate all overheads costs to specific activities. And sometimes people just don't understand them. They can be quite complex. But like I see, the big point is the benefits might not justify the cost. But hopefully my explanation using this will help you understand that the more complex an operation is, the more specialized an operation is, activity-based costing, the overheads themselves are not general, they're quite specific, and if the more specific the overheads are, we should be able to link them to the product that's being made so that we can then get the pricing right, because this is all about pricing. If you don't get the cost right, you're going to get the pricing wrong, right? Okay, great stuff. And that is that question.